This is a show for grown-ups.
And they say bad words.
And they say bad words.
Say final warning.
Final warning.
Hello and welcome to the Pot of Blunders. I'm your host, Nate Magnuski, and with me is Jessica Markram. Jessica, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you today?
I'm living my best life. What else can I say?
Oh, that's awesome.
So let's just jump right into it. What first got you into game design?
Ooh, the Call for Uncaged Anthology, actually.
Wow, all right.
Ashley Warren put out the call, and one of my friends showed it to me while I was standing in our friendly local game store, and I GM'd for him. But yeah, he brought her pitch to me and was basically like, hey, you are a great GM, and which means that you can design a game. And I had my doubts. And he was like, but also, you know Greek mythology really well, and you're really into all this feminist stuff. So you should definitely do this. And I really didn't think I'd get picked, but I did, and then kind of didn't stop.
Yeah, I'd say you're quite the prolific author. It's amazing how much you've created in such a short time. One of my favorite things about your design is how varied all your games and supplements and books are. Was that a goal you set out to do, just create as many things, or is it just come about organically?
It kind of just came about, I think at first, pretty much whenever I saw someone was hiring, I very much jumped in and was like, pick me. Or if I saw a cool project, like in the DMs Guild Discord, people are always posting like that they're doing a collaboration or something, and anything that looked exciting, I wanted to be part of it. And it took me a while to accept that not only do I not have to do everything, I literally don't have time. But also there's a lot of cool game jams going on. So like I have a lot of funky, weird stuff that's kind of on itch. That's a lot cheaper than most of my other stuff, because all the game jam stuff is made in like 2 weeks to a month.
Right.
And those tend to be a little bit, I mean, I have some 5e stuff over there, but most of it is like, hey, make a game based on like a piece of art. Or one game that I made was based on Gallivant.
So what's your favorite thing you have on itch right now? What's your favorite independent game you've made?
Ooh.
Pick your favorite baby.
I mean, I really want to say Operation Cat Chat because my cat is on the cover of it. So he's holding a lot of weight right there. Tony is really cute. But I think The Coven at the End of the Lane is probably some of my best work. I really love what came of that game. And that happened because I was trying to make a game that fit for like 5 different jams at once. And I was like, wow. I will hammer this creation to fit into like Rainbow Jam, Witch Jam. I forget what other jams. It was a lot of things. One was like collaboration or like work some, I don't know, it's all on the page. But yeah, I was trying to hammer it in to like fit in as many boxes as possible, and forcing that many parameters on myself made something that I ended up really liking.
So tell me about that game. What's it all about?
It is basically a group of witches, any gender, and it's very much a narrative heavy game. It's GM-less, or you can have a GM if you want, that's your coven leader. But I watched a live play of it, and they did it without a GM. And the inspiration was like that creepy weird house that's kind of in everybody's neighborhood that the kids make up stories about, like, oh, a murderer took place in that house, or oh, that house is full of witches. And the idea was like, what would it be like to live in that house, or to party in that house? And then like, what spells do you cast on the house to like keep the kids away? And what minor irritations do you do that like piss off your neighbors? And if you're not using a GM, you can draw tarot cards to set the scene, but there's 5 different archetypes. It's not really powered by the apocalypse, but it pulls from that a little bit. So there's like a witch who's really into crystals. There's like in old school hag. There's a witch who's really into plants and poison. There's one who's really into the tarot and she works with death. And then there's just like your goth who is into like blood and poetry and music. And each of them cast magic in a different way. One thing that I liked about it is I don't give you spells. Like you decide, like, what is your signature spell?
Oh, cool. So what was the inspiration behind that? Was it just a way to get more narrative involvement from your players, or?
Yeah, I wanted to give you like what are some basic things that you use to cast, and like what some things that people use. Like the hag uses wooden implements, so it might be like a broom or a wand or a wooden cook spoon if she's really into baking, but she's always going to have something made of wood. Maybe she'll use a necklace or knitting needles. But I gave a school of magic for each of them. So the hag might use like specialize in transfiguration or something, like she'll turn people into frogs. But that's something you can do. And then whatever your signature spell is, I didn't want people to have to roll to do something that like you're supposed to specialize in. Right? Like if you're supposed to be this powerful witch and want to do a thing, like you can just do it. So where it comes in, the difficulty is like trying to cast spells that are either outside of your school of magic, or if you team up with your coven to try and make like really big spells using multiple kinds of magic, then things get really unwieldy and you might like open up a portal to another dimension.
It happens all the time, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I had fun with that one.
I bet. We mentioned this very briefly earlier, and I want you to pull out your soapbox for this and get ready. A lot of your works deal with feminism at the gaming table.
Yes.
Why is feminism so important for the TTRPG space?
Oh, that wasn't where I thought you were going with that question. Okay. I thought you were going to ask why it was important to me, and I was like, because I'm a woman.
I mean, that's a solid answer. I mean,
well, my very first experience in the TTRPG space was getting halfway through character creation for D&D 3.5, and then the GM coming and saying that he didn't like girls at his table. So okay. I left.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And then that was in high school, and then I didn't play for another 12, almost 15 years. And so for me, like, well, first, that sucks. I missed out on a lot of fun. But the more inclusivity we can have, like the more different perspectives we can have, feminine perspectives, queer perspectives, people of different races bringing in their perspectives, like we get a richer playing community and we get a broader experience of worlds to play in.
So what can we do to make the tables more inclusive besides just not being a dick, you know?
Not being a dick can go a long way.
Yeah, it usually helps.
I mean, I think inviting people to your table and the way that you invite them, not just saying like, hey, we need a girl, come play with us, you know?
We need to check some boxes off of this list, so please.
Right? Like not doing it like we need to fill a quota. We could really use, or like, oh, I love playing with women because they always bring the emotional perspective of characters. They're not so mechanically minded, but nice. They really role play well. Like it's not going to do it, Jack. Apologies to Jacks out there everywhere. Yeah, I think just being open to new experiences, like, and I think a lot of this, the online community has helped a lot with this, like people can find other people to play with. That's one of the few good things to come out of 2020 is that a lot of people were forced to play online and then met a broader group of people to play with and got a little bit outside of their home game boxes. I also think I'm talking with my hands a lot. I think a lot of it is also going to come from local game shops and from organized play, like just bringing in diverse writers and having not just a bunch of dudes working in your shop to run those games, to work in the shop, to write those games, and to actually listen to their perspectives, not just to have them as like, look, we have a queer person, that we have we have queer representation. Oh, and it's a woman too. So that's 2 boxes. Go us. You know, but actually like taking their feedback and integrating it, not just using it for permission.
Yeah.
to do what you wanted to do anyway.
That seems all too common right now with some of the bigger players, we'll say, in the industry.
Yeah.
Without mentioning anything in particular, in case people get hired by them and we can save them later on, maybe. I don't know.
I don't think they're probably interested in hiring me, but
same for different reasons. So let's talk about Pugmire.
okay, I'm always game to talk about Pugmire.
And this is going to sound potentially offensive, and I don't mean it to. So I'm sorry in
Offend
advance.
me.
Okay. Well, in that case, no. I thought when I first read it, it was a gag, but there's so much for it.
Yeah.
It can't possibly be.
That's like I think a lot of people have that experience. I hope Eddie doesn't get, Eddie's the creator of Pugmire. Hope doesn't get mad at me for agreeing with you there. But a lot of people see it and they're like, oh, it's a kid's game. Like, we're going to do this silly kids game. And it can work on that level. Like, I do tell people that if you want to introduce your kids to D&D and maybe they're not quite old enough, but they're close, Pugmire is a really good way to go because it's a little bit easier to play.
Right.
And also you get to be a dog or a cat. But if you really get into the lore, like, there's racism and genocide and war, and it takes place in a post-apocalypse where all the humans are dead.
Right.
And it's dark, especially Monarchies of Mao. Like, Monarchies of Mao is bleak. It's like Game of Thrones shit.
When I first started reading it, I'm like, oh, this would be cute. I'm like, this is some heavy shit. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm not ready for this.
Yeah, so I do like that about it, but it can be kind of as light or as heavy as you want it to be. And having run a 3-season Pugmire campaign that started out all with 5 dogs and 1 cat and ended with all cats except for 1 dog. It started out pretty like, we're good dogs and we're going to save the day, and ended up like, we're going to destroy the system and blow up the government.
Radicalized dogs. I love it. And cats.
Yeah. So it can go in either direction.
So you seem to have a lot of comfort dealing with the really heavy games, the really light games, and anything in between.
Yeah, I just like games.
Yeah. And great. And I think we're all better off for that you have such a wide variety of interests.
I think as long as you have a content warning on the games, like I have some very light games. I also have some very heavy games, and I would never want someone to pick up one of my very heavy games and not see the content warning, or be like, oh, she wrote Squad Goals, or she wrote Hero's Journey. This is going to be like light fun. We're going to sing at the table. And be like, oh, this is about some really traumatic shit.
Right.
That's why I try to have like content warnings and to be very clear at the jump. Like, hey, this is exactly what this gets into.
It's always a good thing. I know you and I were talking yesterday briefly, and we mentioned your 2 newest projects that you were working on and how similar they were, how delightfully on the same tone.
Oh, yeah, they're
were.
exactly the same. I mean, they're
So-
both about animals.
Exactly. Common theme. So let's see. Playing Possums, a collection of 4 animal folk player origins.
Yeah, I
let's-
wrote the NPCs for that and provided lore for each of the player origin backgrounds. So like the character creation stuff was written, and then I got to flesh out like what it's like to live in that community.
So were there any animals that you would have wanted to see in this product that were in there?
Ooh, I don't know. I know the big thing was that I know Brittany Hay, who was in charge of the project, really was into burrowers. So if we were to expand maybe moles.
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't notice they were all burrowing animals, but yeah, armadillos, possums, skunks, and one that I cannot think of, badgers. Oh, yes, of course, the preeminent burrower of all of them.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, if we were to expand maybe moles, someone's already requested we expand the possums to include the Australian possum, which I just learned was a thing like today.
They're way cuter than our possums. Our possums look like they were in an accident.
I think they're cute in a different way.
They're all beautiful creatures.
Just like the English and the American badger are cute in different ways.
Yeah, I like that. It's very inclusive of you. And in a very similar vein, what can you tell us about your other bestiary?
Age of Sigmar Soulbound bestiary is from Warhammer Age of Sigmar. So that was fun. I got to write, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say which sections I wrote, but I got to write some daemons, and I got to write some big monsters. And yeah, it some undead, and it wasn't quite playable possums. It was more the creatures of chaos coming to destroy you. But sometimes maybe they have a point. I think some like Tzeentch and Slaanesh are cool.
Yeah. And which one of those would you say is cute in its own way?
Oh, I think actually my favorite monster, like little monster, is the squig, but they're not a demon. I just love them because they boing around. They remind me of the bouncy balls in elementary school gym.
Who doesn't love a good squig?
Right? They're so cute. They're just so happy to be there, like eating things. If we're gonna go with the daemon, though, you got to go with Tzeentch's horrors, which are basically like the demon versions of squigs, but instead of bouncing, they light things on fire and explode.
Very minor difference. It's like the American to Australian possum thing. It's
right, but they're also like little ball things, but they also have like tentacles.
As you do.
Yeah, like you do when you're a daemon from a chaos dimension.
So, were you a big Warhammer player before you were involved in this project?
I had never played Warhammer, but I have been writing for Soulbound for a little bit. I wrote a one-page adventure in the starter set, and I've been doing some writing on an adventure that hasn't come out yet, and another PDF that hasn't come out yet. So there, and a couple other things that haven't come out yet. So I have a lot of Soulbound stuff in the works. I've been having a lot of fun working with C7, but I did have a moment of panic when I first got asked to write for Soulbound because it was for the starter set, and I thought for a second because I didn't realize that it was an RPG, and I was looking at it and I was like, oh no, they want me to write the minis game, and I have no idea what that is or how to play. Like I've seen it, but I don't know what it is or how to play. And then I looked at the book and I was like, oh, thank God, I know how to write an RPG.
That whole universe is so fascinating to me, but I'm so overwhelmed by the depth of the lore.
Yeah.
Like, what's an entry point?
Well, Soulbound's fun because like the world exploded and Sigmar put it back together. So if you're afraid of the Warhammer lore or the Warhammer fantasy lore because there's too much going on, like start at Soulbound because all that stuff doesn't matter anymore.
I love it. Hard reset. Let's go.
Yeah. I know some people have expressed like disappointment because Warhammer Fantasy was like, are the gods real? We don't know. And in Soulbound, it's like, yes, they are. They're the reason that you're alive. But yeah, it's fun. You get to be heroes in that one. Like in Warhammer Fantasy, which I also have something coming out for, it's very much like life sucks and you die because you're a peasant or a sailor who doesn't really know how to do anything, and oops, I'm on a grand adventure and I've died of tetanus. But in Soulbound, you're literally contracted by a god and bound into service by a god, and you're off to save the world doing big important things.
Very cool. Let's give my listeners complete whiplash right now and talk about Book of Seasons. You were nominated for an Emmy for your work on one of the supplements for this too, right?
Yeah, for Book of Seasons Solstices, we were nominated in the adventure category.
It's awesome. Congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
That's really cool. So it's a collection of adventures for 5e, right?
Yep.
What can you tell me about it? What else besides?
So there's 2 volumes. We wanted to get them all in one, but realized since we were publishing like print on demand, that it would be a 400-page book, which is a little bit too big for print on demand and a little more expensive than anybody would want from us. So basically it's the first project that I ever produced, and I jumped in the deep end, but a bunch of us uncaged writers and artists in the Discord were talking about future projects. We have a whole Google Sheets document of like projects that we want to work on together. And people were talking about how they wanted to get together for like a holiday adventure thing, right? Like, let's do a couple of Christmas things coming up. I think this was sometime in the summer. And then we were like, well, why don't we just do every season? And then people can just come back to it. Like, there's always a big rush of winter adventures and Halloween adventures, but why don't we hit like every season? And then we can bring in more than just Christmas. It can be like everything that you like about the cold. It can be like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into winter. And for equinoxes in the fall, like we have stuff about death and dying. We have stuff about Guy Fawkes Day. We have stuff about rebirth. We have stuff about like going back to school. And, but basically each season has 10 adventures that are tiers 1 through 4. So levels 1 through 20 in there. And they each have a brand new, like full color, what am I from, like the 40s, full page illustration to go with them. And it's almost entirely uncaged artists and writers. We had a couple artists come in from Friends, Foes, and Other Fine Folks, which was another uncaged spin-off project. And then Oliver Darkshire came in at the last minute to write an adventure because we had a writer drop right 2 weeks after the deadline. And I was like, Ollie, can you write an adventure in 3 days? And he was like, yeah, sure. So
no problem.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that came about. There's, I think, 48 of us put those 2 books together.
Wow, that's quite the team.
Yeah.
Is it like herding cats at that point, or is it like everyone is on a shared goal so it comes together?
I had a very good team that helped me keep everyone on task and together. And I'm really grateful for all of the other managers that I had that were with me.
Very political. I appreciate that. So you've worked, extensively on a bunch of different teams. You've made a bunch of different solo projects too. Which do you prefer?
Ooh. So I've had really great experiences doing both. I feel like I work harder when I'm on a team because I don't want to let anybody down. And you can tell in the way I advertise it when it's on a group project.
It counts. Yeah.
I'm back in high school today. Yeah. I'm like, look at this cool thing we did. And especially with seasons, because like I was so proud of everybody on that project. Like I just wanted to share everybody's work. But with stuff I made myself, I'm like, here's a piece of crap that I made by myself.
No.
Like, if you want to give me a couple bucks, that's your money.
I can't stop you, I guess.
Like I spent a month making it, but like, here you go. Never let me see it again. But that's, yeah, I feel like I tend to do a lot of group stuff and then do a solo project to kind of like reset my brain.
Sure. Yeah.
And also some group projects can be kind of individual. Like if I've been hired by a couple companies where they're like, hey, write this thing, and you don't talk to anybody else on the team, you might talk to your editor, but you pretty much just get, what you're supposed to write, and you get your style guide and your template, and then you don't talk to anybody, and then that's it. So it's a group project, but also you have no idea what's going on until it's published.
So what is the process for that kind of work? It's you see an ad for it, like, hey, writers wanted for X project, and then you apply with a writing sample?
For those, usually I've gotten invited to be on them. Like I'll get an email or something where they're like, hey, we want you on this project, or like, can you do this by this day, sort of thing.
That's interesting. And then you get the writing, the style guide you said?
Yeah.
What is that exactly? Like, hey, we want this to be
I
so
mean,
many
if you
paragraphs.
Google like D&D style guide, it's
Hmm.
out there. I think Adventures League has a separate one. But most projects on DM's Guild use the official D&D style guide. So it's like in terms of capitalization and bolding and
Sure.
what goes into italics, whether you spell out feet or if you write FT period and where you do which one, whether you're using British English or American English, depending on the company that I'm writing for. So stuff like that.
Seems like incredibly granular, but also if you're only writing this by yourself, maybe just talking to your editor, it seems like you're kind of siloed. Is there ever a concern that you're missing the mark?
I have sometimes worried about that. And that's usually when I'll email the editor and be like, I usually write in Google Docs if I'm allowed to, and be like, hey, just look at my stuff and see if I'm on the right track. Like, am I totally screwing this up? Like, it's not done yet, but if you can just take a look.
Right. To make sure I can course correct if need be right now instead of at the end. Yeah. I'm so riddled with anxiety. I'd be like, look at it now. How about now? Check it out now.
One of the scariest things that was actually Coven at the End of the Lane that I did this in. For my Patreon, I did a poll and asked what they wanted more of, and they said behind the scenes writing stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll give you all access to my Google Doc while I make a game. And they could just watch me write the entire process. And it was terrifying.
Having
they were
the
so nice. Nobody was like, boo. But it was really frightening. And I know some people who like write on streams, and I applaud them because I'm not that person.
Just the thought of that alone could be like an immediate vulnerability hangover that I can't even process right now. So great for you being so brave. That's amazing. But no, it's private time. No, you can't see me write.
Yeah.
Wow. Is there anything that we haven't talked about tonight that you have a burning desire to get to, or just that you want our listeners to know about?
I have a Kickstarter right now.
Oh.
Cryptids Inc. But that I don't know when this is coming out. It might have been finished by then. But if you like D&D and you like cryptids, I'm writing some fun cryptids and making sure to get all the weirdo Midwestern cryptids that I grew up with in there.
I saw you have a Cubs glass, so I assume you're from Chicago area.
I'm from Chicago, yeah. I don't live there anymore, but I grew up right by Wrigley Field.
It was at this point my wife's Chicago sense kicked in, and she Kool-Aid man into the room and peppered Jessica with questions about their shared homeland. So, for the sake of the interview, I cut that part out, and now back to when I tried to get my thoughts back in order.
I don't know where my train of thought was going after that, but it's fully derailed now.
Chicago, which is great.
Yeah, Chicago is great. So your Kickstarter for cryptids. Let's talk. See, look at that, right back on track.
I mean, it's not mine, but I'm a writer for it.
Okay. So where can folks find it after it's wrapped up?
I don't know because we haven't funded yet.
It'll fund. Then we'll find it, and I'll give you more money.
Yeah. So then I don't know what else to talk about. I get a lot of shit for writing about cats.
Okay, let's talk about cats now.
Yeah, that's what I do. I put cats in games.
So we're gonna do a clean break here for editing purposes, and I want us to do a cat question.
Cats and hags. That's what I write.
Cats and hags. That's my new lasers and feelings hack I want to work on next.
Yes.
You have cats and you have hags. Those are your two stats. They are not opposed at all because they go together like a hand in a glove. So
I would play that. That would be a game built just for me.
Hey, Jessica.
Hey.
You have a lot of games about cats.
I do.
What's with all the cats?
I like cats. No, I was so excited when I saw that 5e had playable cats. And that was the first subclass I ever made, was the College of Caterwauling, because my cats were keeping me up all night, and I wanted to make a bardic subclass for people who just wanted to scream like a cat. And then I don't know, I just got this reputation for being the person who writes about cats, and just kind of like really went with it.
I like that. Would you accept the title of role-playing game or TTRPGs cat lady, resident cat lady.
I think that's in my Twitter bio.
Oh God. Okay. So self-appointed RPG cat
I
lady.
got called that enough that yeah, I think that's there.
Perfect. What's your cat's
But-
names?
Tony and Trisket.
Triscuit's cool, and so is Tony. Is Tony a tiger cat?
No, he's like a big white toasted marshmallow.
It's even better. It's better than I thought. And Triscuit is made of crackers, I assume.
Entirely, yeah.
Good,
No,
good,
he's
good.
he's a very tiny black cat. It's short for Triskaidekaphobia because he's 13, and we got him in October on Friday the 13th. Yeah.
And so your cat is a familiar, is what you're telling me. Like it's set up to be a familiar, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good, good, good.
I'm surprised he's not here. Actually, usually when I'm in my office, he like lays underneath my tripod for the camera and like knocks the camera over.
My last interview that happened, the cat kept like putting its butt like in the camera. So I'm like, I think I'll just have this as an audio one now. Jessica, I want to be sensitive to your time. Thank you so much for coming on our show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this was wonderful. Thank you for having me.
And next time you want to come on, just let me know. You're always welcome. Standing invitation. You are a joy.
Oh, this was so fun. Thank you.
I want to thank Jessica again for coming on the show and telling us all about her everything. I mean, we talked about a lot of stuff here. Just so you know, the Cryptids Inc. game did totally fund on Kickstarter. I was right. I'm the best. I win again. And I'll put a link in the show notes where you can find that and all of Jessica's other stuff. Make sure you go support her on Patreon so she can keep doing amazing things. And again, yeah, Pugmire. Check Pugmire out. And the Warhammer thingy. And all the good stuff. All the stuff that is good. The itch.io page. The everything. Do it. You won't. I won't. Yeah, go. And if you want to support the Pot of Blunders, we also have an itch.io page and Patreon. But our links will be below Jessica's links because we, being classy, put our guests first. Let me just throw out my shoulder, patting myself on the back about that. And again, for the Pot of Blunders, I've been Nate Magnuski, and as always, may all your Ds be 12s.